Hey, welcome to Real Talk, where I give real answers to real questions from real worship leaders. If you are a real worship leader with a real question and you want a real answer, head right here and submit your question for a future episode. Got some good questions today? Let's talk about it. I've got a question about how to address an issue on the worship team where there's a lack of leadership. My church's official worship leader stepped down around 6 months ago, and since then, we've had nobody officially overseeing the worship team. My church is planning to fill that spot eventually, but in the meantime, we have several volunteers who share the load with leading worship on the weekends and scheduling teams. However, since before our last worship leader left, we've had an instrumentalist who honestly should not have been added to the team in my opinion. I really like him. He's got a heart for worship and is fairly teachable, but every time he plays, he noticeably struggles with the songs to the point where it's super distracting. He's got timing issues and hits wrong notes often throughout each song. And while I've tried to work with him on his instrument, and he's always taken my feedback reasonably well, I've seen very little improvement in his skills. I've spoken to other members of our core worship team, and they all agree that it's an issue. However, because nobody is officially in the role of worship leader and there's no real leadership structure in place, everybody is hesitant to do anything beyond continuing to encourage him to be practicing throughout the week. Any thoughts on how to address this in an honoring way? I see this frequently on Real Talk, is like, there was a worship leader on a team, and then they step away, and now there's no leadership structure in place, just like your team. So I'm telling you this because you're not alone. There's no leadership structure in place, and then there's a problem on the team, and then nobody can do anything about it because they don't have any authority leadership-wise to do anything about it. So the first thing that I think you need to do is to clarify, not just for this situation, but for any situations that happen in the future, what is the leadership structure of your team? Like in the interim, until you find a new worship team leader who's going to actually be in charge of the team, you need to have a structure in place because there's always going to be things that come up. There's always going to be decisions that need to be made, and you can hope and pray that you can run on autopilot for the next 6 more months or a year or however long it is until you get somebody new to lead the worship team, but that's probably not going to happen. There's going to be decisions that need to be made, and so I guess my question would be, who outlines that structure in your church? If you're confused about it, then it's probably not you, right? So who should you go to? I would think that you'd probably go to your pastor in your church and say, hey, I'm struggling with this on our worship team right now. It seems like we're going to have to make leadership level decisions, and we don't have anybody who can make those decisions right now, and so we're just kind of stuck in limbo. So what are your thoughts on that? I would pass that question on to the pastor in your church, whoever's in charge, whoever seems to be appropriate to talk to in your church about that. I'm not sure how big your church is. Some churches have multiple pastors, so I won't get too specific there. But you need a leadership structure in place, not just for this situation, but for any situation that arises in the next 6 months to a year, however long it is. So first step, clarify your position on the team, clarify what the overall structure is. Is anybody in charge? Somebody should probably be in charge of the worship team during this time, and maybe it's multiple people working together, but those multiple people working together should add up to, these are the people who are leading the team and can make decisions. Now, where you're at right now, I think what you're doing is about all that you can do until you seek clarity. And I'll say this, if you seek clarity on what your position is in the worship team with your pastor, and they say, hey, just ride it out, we're in the process of finding a new worship team leader, then probably what you're doing right now is what you need to be doing and all that you can be doing. Because if you're not the leader on your team, then it's not really your responsibility to decide who should and shouldn't be on the team. So you see how it all hinges around clarifying your position, because if it is your position to make that decision, then that's a different conversation. But it doesn't sound like it is right now, and I think you would know if it was. But it sounds like your pastor probably just told you, or whoever made the decision said, hey, we don't have a worship team leader anymore. You 2 or 3 people or however many people it is, just kind of, schedule things, keep things running until we find someone new. So I guess there are seasons in our ministry where sometimes we need to push forward and get things accomplished, and there are seasons where we need to wait. And not that we're doing it just, because we're lazy, but because we're waiting on the next step to fall in place. I think, actually, I can relate to this situation now that I think about it, because when I first started at this church, we didn't have a pastor at this church. It was the pastor had just left whenever I started here, and I was in the same situation that you were, but not in my worship ministry specifically, but in the church at large. I mean, I guess the church at large was kind of in that situation where it's like, hey, we're looking for a new pastor. We don't want to make any big changes right now. We don't want to make any big decisions, because if we make a big decision and then the new pastor comes in and they have a different idea or a different vision, direction for the church, we want to give them a clean slate to work with. I mean, it wasn't clean. This church has been around for a long time. There is an established way of doing things, but we don't want to say to the church, hey, we're moving in this new direction, and then a pastor comes in and says, well, let's move in the other direction. We don't want to zigzag back and forth. And so when I was here for the first year, I just went with the flow and made a few changes along the way that I felt like I had the authority to make as the new worship director here. But I wasn't coming in trying to change a million different things. It was just, okay, I'm going to stay in this lane. We'll wait for future direction whenever a pastor comes. And so I tell you that because I feel like it's the same thing with you. Like, keep encouraging this person. If it's not your responsibility, if you don't have the authority to remove them from the team, then it sounds like you are doing everything that you can do. Keep encouraging them, keep helping them on their instrument. I think it's appropriate if you have some form of leadership to be like, hey, whatever the person's name is, I noticed that, it seems like you're struggling a little bit on Sundays, and I just want to make sure that you have all of the resources that you need to be prepared for Sunday, because I noticed, you're struggling with timing, hitting some wrong notes, and I'd love to work with you on that. And I think the good part is you said that this person is receptive to feedback. So if you can have that conversation with them, that'll probably do tons of good for you in your worship ministry, because then you're actually building a relationship with somebody and walking alongside them. So if your church is going to find a new worship leader and you don't have the authority to remove somebody from the team right now, it's not worth stepping on somebody's toes. I'm not sure how bad their playing is, but the previous worship leader decided that they should be on the team. Whether that was a good decision or not, I don't know. But my point is, it's probably not your mess to clean up in the current situation that you're in right now. So what do? You try to spot clean and help them out as much as you possibly can, get them resources that they need, walk alongside them, help them at rehearsal, just be a friend to them and a mentor to them the best that you can, like you have been doing. We have multiple worship leaders. When some leaders introduce new songs, they claim it as their song to sing, and others feel like they have to ask permission to sing that song. How can I prevent this? I've seen this in churches before, and I've felt this temptation in my own ministry as well. Right now on my team, we have 3 different singers who can all sing lead songs, and it is tempting to be like, hey, this is your song, so you lead it. And I do typically have some form of that thought, right? It's like, you put in the work to learn this song and be ready to lead it, but at the same time, also anybody else can lead it, because maybe you're not going to be there some Sunday, and that means that if you're not there, it's not like we're not going to sing the song if it fits for that Sunday. So other people need to be able to lead it as well. So what should you do? I think it's just a simple conversation. I think we overcomplicate these things, and we think about them in our heads, and it's like, well, this person's going to be mad if I take their song and give it to this person, and this person's going to be mad if I take their song and give it to this person, and back and forth. But if you just make that a part of your culture, then people will realize nobody owns any of these songs. Whoever is scheduled to sing them on Sundays is going to sing them. And so I do that with my keyboard player who plays on my worship team, he often leads Behold Him by Paul Balash. He leads Yet Not I, but Through Christ in Me. He leads Lord, I Need You. He's got like maybe 6 or 7 songs that he leads on a regular basis. But every once in a while, I'll take those songs and say, hey, Patrick, I'm going to lead these songs this Sunday because of X, Y, and Z. And because I've built it into the natural rotation of how we do things, it's not a big deal when you make it a regular occurrence. Now, that being said, like I said, I think it is prudent to have a person primarily lead a song. Not that they have to lead the song and that becomes their song, but I think it just makes sense logistically if it's easier to plan then. You don't have people learning new songs all the time because there's a difference between singing harmony and singing lead on a song. So should people know how to sing both? They can, but take it, one step at a time and do it slowly over time. But I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having one person being the main leader of this song on a regular basis. But there is a problem if somebody says, I claim this song as my own and nobody else can sing it because that's my song. So first of all, don't overthink it. Don't be like, this person can only sing this song and I can't give it to anybody else. But also don't think we need to spread the song out every single week just for the sake of spreading it out every single week. So what should you do in the situation that you're in right now? Here's what I would do, depending on how big of a problem it is in your team. It sounds like you say that people claim the song as their own and they say, this is my song, nobody else can sing it. If that was the case, I would just sit down with people and I would not just say, because this is what I used to do in my youth as a worship team leader, I would just tell them the decision. I would say, hey, we're going to start spreading these songs out more. And so next Sunday, this person's going to lead this song when this person over here usually leads it. I've learned in my leadership that it's better to explain the decision. So maybe you need to think about, why do I want different people leading songs? How's that going to benefit my church in the long run? So get it in your own head first, like, why do I want different people to be able to lead the same song? And then communicate that to your team. So what are some of those reasons? Well, number one, if somebody's not here on a Sunday, we still want to be able to sing that song. And so if you're not here on Sunday, then somebody else needs to be prepared to lead it. So there's reason number one. Reason number two, I guess, would be sometimes maybe if you're switching between a male vocal and a female vocal, you're going to sing in different keys. And so sometimes having different people sing the same song is going to help the flow of the keys. Like, you might be able to put 2 songs in the same key if somebody different sings it this Sunday. So from a logistical flow perspective, it's going to help with that. Number 3, it helps to have different people lead songs in your service because different people connect with people differently. So you might lead a song in one way, a different person might lead the same song in a different way. And because you are a middle-aged mom with 3 kids, people in your church are going to connect with you as the leader. Obviously, we're connecting with God, but in congregational worship, we are connecting with other people as well. There is a vertical relationship, but also a horizontal relationship as well, where we're connecting with each other. So you might be a middle-aged mom with 3 kids. Somebody connects with you that way, and as you're leading that song, through the words that you say, your speaking transition, if you're speaking during the songs, you might connect with somebody in your church a specific way, and then you've got this younger guy in your church who's like just out of college leading worship, and he connects with people differently in your church. So just in who's leading the song, it can come across a different way and connect in different ways. And not that one way is better or worse than the other way. It's just a different way. And in that, what do we have? We have the fullness of the body of Christ edifying each other in different ways. So it allows us to use our gifts to edify the body in different ways. And it just makes me think of that. Where's that verse where it's, not everybody's a hand, not everybody's a foot. We all need each other in the body of Christ. We want the same thing on our worship team. Not everybody is a hand, not everybody is a foot. Obviously, we have different instruments that we play. Some sing, some play bass, so on and so forth. And that is, in my mind, a picture of the unity of the church. Not that I would ever preach from that on Sunday, but that is a picture of the unity of the church. What else is a picture of the unity of the church in those specific subsets of instrumentation, one of those being vocalists, when the vocalists can come together and unify and say, this is not mine, this is not yours, this is ours together, we share it together. That is a picture of unity in the church. So just a few things for you to think through. There's probably 2 or 3 more reasons that you can come up with when explaining it to your team. But don't just tell them everybody's going to start singing whatever song they want. Nobody owns these songs anymore. I would put some of that talk when I address my team, because I think that is the overall point. But give them the why behind why you're making the decision and bring them along on that journey. And when do you have this conversation? I think one of the best times to have that conversation is during your worship rehearsal. And some of us don't have a plan for our worship rehearsal, so we never make the time to have these discussions in our rehearsal. And that's why I put together the worship rehearsal blueprint. I'll link it down in the description below. In that free PDF, I give you the 5 parts to what I think is the perfect worship rehearsal. It allows you to lead your team well musically, obviously, because we are musical worship leaders, but also spiritually, so that we grow closer to God, and relationally, so that we grow closer to each other. So if you want to see how I structure my worship rehearsals in my church and how you can implement it into your church as well, check out the worship rehearsal blueprint linked down in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Till I see you in the next video. Keep leading worship well.